I sat up straight in bed and glanced at the clock on the bedside table. It was 2:30 a.m. My t-shirt was soaked, as it always was when I had the dream. I looked over at my wife, Kathy, and saw that she was sound asleep. I was relieved I hadn't woken her this time. I must not have been ranting in my sleep. I didn't know what triggered the dream, but it was always the same. It was a distorted version of memories from an event that happened more than 2 years ago. In the dream, I was sitting at the desk in my study. In front of me, there was a half-full bottle of scotch, an empty glass, and a .38 revolver. I would pour myself a full glass of scotch and drink it in one large gulp. The strange thing was, I never tasted the liquor, nor did I feel its effects. Then, I'd pick up the gun, open the cylinder, and check that all 6 chambers contained live cartridges. I would say, "It's full. None missing. I want to kill them. I want to kill all 3 of those. If I do it, I'll go to jail. No, I'll kill myself. God damn them." The words weren't always the same, but the idea was. Thankfully, the dreams had become less frequent over time. At first, I had them once a week, sometimes even twice, but now it was less than once every 2 months. During the dream, everything felt so real, like it was actually happening. But when I woke up, I realized that the dream had little in common with the actual event. There had been a bottle of scotch, but I was on the sofa in the living room, not at a desk. There was a revolver, but I didn't own a gun. I never made any threats to kill anyone that night. I had gotten drunk, very drunk, and passed out on the sofa. To understand this, I have to go back to the beginning, to the year 2002. It was a rough year. The problems began in January when Kathy and I fought with the city inspectors over the design of our new home. They kept rejecting our application for a building permit until finally, I hired an engineer to sign off on our blueprint, assuring the inspectors that the plans were safe and met building codes. Once we finally had the permit, we ran into issues with the contractor. We struggled to keep the project on schedule until we could move into the house in August. Along with the stress of building our home, Kathy and I were both busy with our careers. My name is Fred, and on March 6, 2002, Kathy and I celebrated our 6th anniversary. Despite the ongoing struggles with our house, things were going well in most aspects of our lives. I had been working for Independent Investigations Corporation, IC, in Indianapolis for 8 years. IC wasn't your typical private detective agency. We worked with large insurance companies, investigating claims for fraud, recovering stolen property, or mitigating client losses. We were paid a percentage of what we saved or recovered for the insurance companies. As a lead investigator, I had the freedom to choose the cases I worked on and assign tasks to others. This job was quite lucrative, and at 30 years old, I had just started noticing a few gray hairs in my otherwise thick, dark brown hair. I'd been called confident, and while some men might be described as handsome, sexy, or even hot, I was just confident, whatever that means. I wasn't movie star handsome, nor was I ugly. My features were pretty average, except for my slightly crooked nose, which had been broken in a college boxing match. My eyes were very dark brown. Standing at 6 feet 2 inches and weighing 185 pounds, I had a tall, athletic build and always stood straight. My facial expressions rarely gave away what I was thinking. Kathy, on the other hand, was 29, 5 feet 8 inches, and the sexiest woman I knew. Her long, dark brown hair with red highlights cascaded to her shoulders in soft curls. Her blue eyes, with tiny specks of green in the irises, were captivating. At 125 pounds, she had a slim, well-proportioned figure. Kathy had the legs of a dancer, with nicely shaped calves, firm thighs, and soft, smooth skin. She was the manager of the accounting department at DCNH, where she had 20 accountants reporting to her. DCNH, specialists in mergers and acquisitions, had been thriving, which meant Kathy received nice year-end bonuses. But early in 2002, things took a turn at DCNH. In February, the manager of the Indianapolis office was fired and replaced by Greg Bartlett. Greg was about 5 feet 5 inches, at least 20 pounds overweight, and nearly bald. The remaining hair around his head formed a horseshoe. Kathy said that Greg was a good manager. I met Greg Bartlett and found him likable at first, but at the same time, there was something about him that made me uneasy. Bartlett had just arrived in Indianapolis as part of a company restructuring at DCNH. They'd also transferred one of their vice presidents to the office. Kathy told me it was part of a company strategy to spread their VPs across different cities to visit customers and close big deals. The new VP was Jack Hansen, who had moved to Indianapolis from New York. Jack was about 45 years old, stood at 6 feet tall, and had gray hair. He was in good shape, and it was clear he worked out regularly. When I met him, he was friendly, but I noticed the way he looked at women. It wasn't just a passing glance. It was as though he was sizing them up, deciding whether he wanted to sleep with them. He was married, but I doubted that would slow him down. I had met many men like him before, and I didn't like any of them. Kathy, on the other hand, seemed to think he was great. She talked about him constantly, telling me about all the great ideas he had for driving new business, which, of course, meant more money for her. By the summer, construction on our new house was finally complete, and the turmoil caused by the management changes at DCNH had settled down. According to Kathy, business was picking up, thanks to Mr. Hansen's influence. We moved into our new home just outside Indianapolis in the second week of August, and we loved it. On the day we moved in, I jokingly told Kathy that I wanted to make love in every room of the house. Kathy, looking at all the boxes waiting to be unpacked, took my hand and led me into the kitchen. "Let's get the kitchen out of the way right now," she said. I had been joking, but when she pulled me into the kitchen, I became very serious. We had amazing sex right then and there. Once we were done, Kathy headed off to the bathroom to clean up. As she left the room, she called back to me, "We'll do the bedroom tonight and the living room tomorrow. Now, get back to work." We did the bedroom that night, but didn't manage to make it to the other rooms. Between our jobs and settling into the house, we just didn't have the time or energy for anything more. Still, we managed to stay in touch in our own way. Our bedroom was the only place where we could truly be together. One night, while we were in bed making love, I began to discuss starting a family. We talked about it before, and Kathy had said she wanted to wait until the fall so we could have a summer baby. "I think it's time you get off your birth control pills and we get you pregnant," I said. "I think we should wait a little longer," Kathy replied. "Jack suggested I wait until next year. He told me I'm in line for a promotion, and it might happen by the end of the year. I want to wait until I get the promotion." "Jack?" I asked, my voice sharp. "Since when are you on a first-name basis with corporate vice presidents?" "We're pretty informal around the office," she responded. "Why would you discuss our plans for starting a family with him?" I asked, frustrated. "He asked me if we were planning to have children, so I told him we were planning to start this fall," Kathy explained. "That's when he suggested I wait until next year." I wasn't happy about her discussing our personal matters with Jack, but I agreed to wait until January, towards the end of the year. Both Kathy and I were working long hours, and it felt like we were drifting apart. We tried to make weekends special, but even our weekends were becoming consumed by work. DCNH was trying to win a contract for a large merger, and Kathy's accounting department was tied up with that. As for me, I was running 3 investigations I needed to close before the year's end. The last weekend in November, Kathy and I managed to be off at the same time. We went Christmas shopping and had dinner together. That evening, Kathy shared some good news. It looks like we'll close the deal with National Pharmaceutical to handle the merger with Keystone Pharmaceutical by December 20th, she said. That means I should get my promotion this year. Really? That's terrific. Then we can start working on getting you pregnant, I said, excited. We can't start tonight, she replied. I'm still on the pill, and I want to wait a few more months to get settled into my new job before taking maternity leave. She added, and don't you dare tell anyone that I told you this. I could get into a lot of trouble if this gets out, and it might kill the deal with National. I was disappointed, but I understood her reasons. You know I won't tell anyone, I said. Should I run out and buy stock in National Pharmaceutical? No, don't be ridiculous, she replied. If you do that, we could all go to jail, Kathy warned. I was just joking, I replied. I know he can't do anything like that. You can count on my discretion. I know, she responded. I'm just nervous about this one. We're so close. I don't want anything to go wrong. December rolled around, bringing with it the season for company Christmas parties, and ours was no exception. Our party was on Friday, December 6th. It was a tame affair with 43 people in attendance, including employees, spouses, and significant others. We had drinks and appetizers, followed by dinner. Afterward, there were more drinks, music, and dancing. The party wasn't exactly wild, but that was typical for us at IC. Most of the employees are investigators, and we spend so much time working in the field that we don't work closely together. I have one close friend at IC, Bill Ripley, and we've worked together on several cases over the years. But the rest of the team, I know who they are, but I couldn't tell you their spouses' names or how many kids they have. We just weren't a close-knit group, unlike Kathy's team at DCNH. Kathy and I sat with Bill and his wife, Susan, and had a great time despite the low-key atmosphere around us. We stayed at the party until midnight, then headed home. Once we got into the house, I led Kathy to our bedroom. Once there, I pulled her close and kissed her. As I held her, I kissed and nuzzled her neck, which drove her crazy. I couldn't help inhaling her wonderful scent. Kathy pulled away for a moment, then helped me undress and lie down on the bed. She climbed on top of me, and her confident, assertive demeanor caught me off guard. "Oh yeah," was all I could manage to say. I couldn't believe how she was speaking to me, but she was right. I did like it. On nights like this, when we knew we would be close, Kathy would apply a tiny drop of her cologne. I loved how it blended with her natural scent. It was enough to re-energize me. After a few moments, while enjoying Kathy's presence, we shared an intimate connection in various ways. As we moved together, we began to talk about our plans for a family. We both agreed that we wanted 2 kids, 2 years apart. Kathy mentioned that she would stop taking her birth control pills in February, hoping for a baby the following November. She said that if she got the promotion she was expecting, a November birth would be ideal. I wasn't thrilled about waiting that long, but I knew it was her body that would carry the baby. It was strange but nice to lay there, having sex with Kathy while we talked about what we'd name our future child. I loved Kathy with all my heart, and that night felt especially meaningful to me. The next day, things began to change in a disturbing way. I had to go into the office for a half day, and when I got home, Kathy was sitting in the family room, staring out the window. She didn't even look at me when I came in. When I spoke to her, she jumped, as though she hadn't realized I was there. It was obvious something was bothering her deeply. I wanted to ask her about it, but I gave her space and waited for her to decide when she was ready to talk. After dinner, I pressed her for an explanation. Early in our marriage, Kathy and I had made a deal. Whoever cooked dinner got to relax afterward, while the other did the dishes and cleaned the kitchen. That night, Kathy cooked, so I loaded the dishwasher and cleaned the kitchen. Once I was done, I joined her in the family room. Kathy and I had always been open with each other, so I waited for her to open up. When it became clear she wasn't going to talk on her own, I decided to bring it up. "Kathy, what's going on? It's obvious something's bothering you," I said. "Is there anything I can do to help?" She looked at me with sad eyes. "There's a problem with the national pharmaceutical deal," she said. "It turns out that the president of National, Mr. Ben, is making unrealistic demands. If we don't meet them, we could lose the deal. If that happens, everything will fall apart." "It won't ruin everything," I said, trying to reassure her. "Whatever happens, we have each other. Don't worry so much. What's the worst that could happen?" "You don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "If this deal falls apart, it will be because of me. If that happens, I could lose my job. How can it be your fault if the deal falls through?" I asked, confused. I asked Kathy about her situation, but she told me she couldn't talk to anyone outside of DCNH about it. "I can't share anything more," she said. "All I can say is that I didn't do anything wrong." I replied, "If you didn't do anything wrong, then how can this be your fault?" She responded firmly, "I've already told you too much. I could lose my job for even saying that much. I need to handle this on my own." I wanted to say more, but I could tell by the look on her face that the conversation was over. On Sunday, I hoped Kathy would be in a better mood, but she seemed even more withdrawn. She wouldn't even look at me, and any attempt at a longer conversation was pointless. On Monday morning, I woke up early and prepared breakfast, but Kathy didn't eat any of it. She just drank her coffee and went to take a shower. I spent the time clearing the snow from the driveway. When I came back inside, Kathy was getting ready to leave for work. "It's only 6:30. Why are you leaving so early?" I asked. "I have to get ready for some important meetings," she replied, brushing past me with a brief kiss as she headed to the garage. Monday was trash day in our neighborhood, so I had to empty the wastebaskets and take the trash out to the curb. As I brought the waste baskets from upstairs down to the kitchen, something fell out of the bathroom basket when I dumped it into the trash bag. I looked for the object for a few minutes but couldn't find it, so I gave up. After taking the trash out, I rolled the large plastic can to the curb and went back into the house. I searched the kitchen one more time for the object, but it was nowhere to be found. I went to take my shower and get ready for work, still distracted by the missing item. That evening, Kathy's mood hadn't improved, so I tried to bring up the topic again. "Has anything gotten better at work?" I asked. "You know I can't talk to you about this," she responded. "I'm under a lot of pressure, but I'll get through it." By Wednesday, Kathy seemed to be coming out of her funk. When I got home that evening, she greeted me with a kiss and told me she loved me, something she hadn't done since Friday night. Though she wasn't completely back to normal, there was no smile on her face. She seemed more present and less distant. "Can you talk about what's going on now? Or is that still off limits?" I asked. "I'm not supposed to talk to you about it, but it looks like we've found a way to make Mr. Benson happy," she said. "Jack said it looks like things should turn out all right after all." I could hear some relief in her voice, but she didn't smile when she told me, so I knew she was still under a lot of stress. I hoped this situation would soon be resolved. I couldn't help but feel uneasy when Kathy referred to Hanson by his first name. She told me it was because things were informal at her office, but she always referred to Greg Bartlett as Mr. Bartlett, even though Greg was the office manager and Hanson was a VP. I didn't quite understand it. That night in bed, Kathy asked me to hold her, but she didn't want to make love. I could feel the weight of the pressure she was under. I held her until she fell asleep, then rolled over to my side of the bed, but I couldn't sleep. After 20 minutes of tossing and turning, I got up and went to the kitchen for a drink. I stood at the island counter, drinking water and sorting through the mail, when something caught my eye. Kathy's briefcase was sitting on a chair nearby. I had never invaded her privacy before, but for some reason that night I decided to open it. The briefcase wasn't locked, so I opened it and found several papers inside, but nothing that gave me any answers. I took out her day planner and looked through the notes. On Monday, Kathy had 2 meetings with Mr. Bartlett, and the second meeting also included Mr. Hansen. On Tuesday, she had another meeting with Hansen, and on Wednesday, she met with both Hansen and Mr. Benson, the president of National Pharmaceuticals. I started to understand the pressure Kathy was facing, but I couldn't figure out why she was meeting with a client. She worked in accounting, not sales, and had never been part of a negotiation team before. I wondered if this meant she was transitioning out of accounting and into sales with her promotion. In Kathy's planner, I noticed a couple more meetings scheduled with Bartlett, along with another meeting with Hansen on the morning of December 20th. Also on that day, Kathy had written 10 p.m., followed by a question mark. The most unusual thing I found was a set of notations on her month-at-a-glance calendar for December. On December 6th, Kathy had written started, and each day after that was numbered 1 through 14, with the number 14 on Friday, December 20th, circled and underlined. I couldn't figure out if the circled date had something to do with the meeting scheduled with Hansen or if it was because it was DCNH's Christmas party. Maybe it was marked because they expected Mr. Benson to sign the contract that day. I was still puzzled by the numbering from December 6th to December 20th, 1 through 14. I knew I'd have to think about it more. I put Kathy's day planner back in her briefcase and closed it. When I went back to bed, the briefcase was still on the chair where I had left it. Over the next several days, Kathy's mood continued to improve, though she remained a bit distant. In my 8 years as an investigator, I had learned how to get answers without making people feel interrogated. By piecing together bits and pieces of what Kathy had shared, I realized the 20th seemed to be the critical date. If Mr. Benson was going to sign the contract with DCNH, it would likely happen that day. On Friday, December 13th, I closed one of the 3 cases I was working on and was close to closing another. That night, I stopped for a beer with Bill Ripley to celebrate. After a couple of beers, I decided to tell Bill about the days numbered 1 through 14 and the circle date on December 20th, without mentioning it was Kathy's planner. I explained it was from a case I was working on. Bill looked at me and said, "Sorry, buddy, but I can't help you. Doesn't ring any bells. You said the planner belonged to a woman, right?" "Yes," I said. "Then I suggest you talk to Mary Fr. You might need a female perspective to crack this one." Bill was right. A woman's perspective was probably what I needed. Mary Fr. was one of the best investigators at SE and one of only 3 females at the company. I dropped the subject to avoid sounding obsessed with the case. We had a couple more beers and talked about other things. During the conversation, I mentioned my dream of someday starting my own investigative agency. "If you ever do, let me know," Bill said. "I'll come work for you, but you'll have to pay me better than I see." "Pay you more? Hell, you're already overpaid," I joked. Bill laughed. "Seriously, if you ever do start your own agency, come talk to me." "It probably won't happen," I said. "But if it does, you'll be the first person I talk to." After a while, I went home. It was another frustrating weekend. Kathy was affectionate, but somehow we made it through the weekend without having sex. It had been over a week since we were intimate, and it was beginning to disturb me. Not just because I had been cut off, but because I didn't understand why. On Monday morning, I told Kathy I'd likely have to work late every night to wrap up the 2 cases I was handling. "You can't work late on Friday," she said. "You have to be home in time to get ready for the party." "What time do we have to be there?" I asked. The party starts at 8 o'clock. I want to be there by 8:30 at the latest, she replied. So you need to be home by 7 o'clock. Okay, I'll be home by 7 o'clock, I said, but I was frustrated. By midweek, I was getting angry with Kathy. I had closed my second case on Tuesday and took Kathy out to dinner to celebrate, but afterward, she told me she didn't feel well. Once again, we didn't have sex, and she brushed me off. On Wednesday night, it took all my patience not to lose my temper. I knew she was under a lot of pressure at work, but there was a limit to how long I could wait. I convinced myself everything would be resolved by Friday. Kathy would know about the National Pharmaceuticals deal and whether she would get her promotion, so I was prepared to be patient until then. By Thursday, I had all but closed my last case. I would have one final chance at a quick resolution on Friday morning, but if that didn't work, it would take the rest of the day. I knew it was going to be difficult to get everything done and still be home by 7 o'clock like I promised Kathy. At dinner that evening, I told her I was going to have a hard time making it. She started to get angry. You promised, she said. I know, I replied. I'm sorry, but I'm so close. I just have to close this tomorrow. I could see her frustration building. Kathy, you don't have to wait for me. If I'm not home on time, go without me. I'll get there as soon as I can. I should be able to make it by 9 o'clock. I don't want to go without you, she said, but then added, I guess 9 o'clock will be all right. I can't be any later than that. I'll do my best to be home by 7:30, I promised. If I'm not, I'll meet you at the party. Kathy didn't say anything more about it. On Friday morning, I got the break I needed in my case. I had been assigned to recover stolen jewelry from a home break-in, worth over $1 million. The thief had contacted the insurance company and offered to sell the stolen jewelry back for $250,000, saving them $750,000. The insurance company agreed and asked me to handle the transaction. It had taken a while to gain the thief's trust, but I finally set up a meeting for the exchange. I had to go to the insurance company's office to collect the money, and the paperwork involved was time-consuming. Luckily, I managed to follow the thief to a coffee shop, then called his cell phone to arrange a meeting that afternoon. After the call, I trailed him to an old garage on the west side of town. I watched from across the street as he went inside, opened the trunk of an old car, but didn't take anything out. He just closed the trunk and left. Before leaving the garage, he looked around to see if anyone was watching but didn't notice me. Once he was gone, I ran across the street, used a tire iron to break the padlock, and opened the trunk. Inside, I found a small canvas bag containing the stolen jewelry. I locked up the garage and taped a note to the broken padlock. Better luck next time. Back at my office, I contacted the insurance company, let them know I had the stolen jewels, and arranged for someone to pick them up. I felt pretty pleased with myself. I'd stopped a thief from profiting, saved the insurance company a lot of money, and earned a nice fee for my company. The best part was that the victims got their jewelry back. It was a pretty good day's work. As I left my office, I saw Mary F.R. talking to another investigator. I waited until she finished her conversation, then walked over to her and invited her to lunch. Mary had started at IC 4 years ago, and I'd known her almost that entire time. At almost 6 feet tall, with short blonde hair and piercing green eyes, Mary was both attractive and intimidating. One of the reasons she was so good at her job. Are you buying? Fred asked. I'll pay if you can help me with something I'm working on, I said. Okay, you're on, Mary replied. We walked across the street to a small sandwich shop, where I bought us a couple of pastrami sandwiches and 2 sodas. As we sat down, Mary joked, This must not be that big of a case if this is all you're willing to spend to get information. I always liked Mary's sense of humor. While we ate, I told her about the notations on Kathy's month-at-a-glance calendar, without revealing who I was investigating. I explained the days numbered 1 through 14 and how the 20th was circled and underlined. I showed this to Bill Ripley, and he suggested that because it was a woman's calendar, I should ask a woman to explain it. Does this have any meaning to you? Mary was silent for a long time, almost finishing her sandwich before she began to smile. What are you smiling about? I asked. The numbers, she said, still smiling. It took me a while, but I think I know what this is about. You said that on the 6th, she wrote started. And after that, the days were numbered 1 to 14, with the 20th circled and underlined, right? That's right, I said. Mary leaned in and explained. I believe she wrote started on the 6th because that's when her last period started. Then, she counted the 14 days until the day she would probably be most fertile. This means that today is her most fertile day. Mary paused, letting it sink in. This woman is tracking her cycle. Mary's insight stunned me. Not just because she figured it out so easily, but because it had never even occurred to me. She's trying to get pregnant? I asked, still in shock. I'm not sure, I replied, but it might make sense in the context of this case. Thanks for your help. Well, for the little bit of help I gave you, a pastrami sandwich was a fair payment, Mary joked. After lunch, we returned to the office. I spent the rest of the day catching up on paperwork, but my mind kept returning to why Kathy would be tracking her menstrual cycle. I couldn't remember when her last period was. I never kept track of her cycles, and I was always surprised when she'd tell me there were small craft warnings during her period. Another thing that puzzled me was that Kathy hadn't planned on stopping her birth control pills until at least February. So why would she be tracking her cycle now? Could she be tracking this for someone else? I was starting to get a tight feeling in my gut. I was picking up bits and pieces of information that didn't seem to fit, but I had a sense I needed to get answers soon. From my training and experience, I knew that patience was key. Rushing to conclusions could be dangerous, and I'd learned to wait until all the facts were in place. I had always been patient, which is probably why I'd been successful in this line of work. It was hard, but this was definitely a time for patience. By 5 p.m., I had finished my work and was ready to head home. It was already dark, and snow seemed imminent. As I drove home through rush hour traffic, I felt good about myself. I had closed 3 big cases and got an answer to one of my questions about Kathy's planner. I was also going to be home in plenty of time to take Kathy to her party, hoping it would help relieve some of her stress. I arrived home around 5:30 p.m. and parked in the driveway. I didn't think it made sense to park in the garage if we were going back out soon. I walked down to the street to get the mail and then headed back to the front door. I hadn't checked the garage, so I wasn't sure if Kathy was home yet. When I stepped onto the front porch and was about to unlock the door, I noticed the front hall light was on. I peered through the small window next to the door to see if Kathy was in sight, but she wasn't. As I started to unlock the door, I saw movement at the top of the stairs. Kathy was coming down. I was shocked to see that she was completely naked, holding something in her hands, but I couldn't make it out at first. I leaned back from the window, not wanting her to see me and get startled. When she reached the bottom step, I saw she was holding a towel in one hand and a can of shaving cream in the other. I was puzzled. What was she doing with the shaving cream? She stepped off the bottom step, turned to the right, and walked into the living room, stopping by a wing chair just a few feet inside. She stood there, almost as if she had forgotten why she had gone in. I couldn't take my eyes off her. She looked so beautiful, her long dark brown hair cascading in curls over her shoulders, her strong yet slender back tapering to her heart-shaped bottom, and her beautiful legs. I felt myself becoming aroused as I stared at my sexy wife. I knew I should move, but I couldn't resist enjoying the view for another minute. In those 2 minutes, my world changed. I watched, then quickly dashed to my car. I opened the door and pushed the button for the garage door opener. Took about 15 seconds to open. Then I pulled the car into the garage. As I walked up the steps to the kitchen door, I hit the button to close the garage door and waited for it to finish before opening the door into the kitchen. I figured the sound of the garage door closing would give Kathy enough warning that I was home. As I stepped into the kitchen, I thought I heard another door close somewhere else in the house. I walked through the room and into the living room, but there was no sign of Kathy. "Kathy, I'm home," I yelled as I started up the stairs. When I entered our bedroom, I called out again, "Kathy." This time she answered, "You're home early. That's great. I'm in the bathroom getting ready. Why don't you use the guest shower?" "Why?" I asked. "What's going on in there?" "I'm busy in here," she added. I pretended I didn't hear that and walked in anyway. "What did you say?" I asked, seeing Kathy sitting on the side of the bathtub. She quickly tried to cover herself, but not fast enough. "I told you I was busy in here, get out," she said. "What are you doing?" I asked. Kathy gave me a nervous look. She had been about to start shaving when I walked in. "It was supposed to be a surprise," she said. "For whom?" I asked. "For you, of course. I wanted to surprise you when we got home from the party tonight," she explained. "Did I ever tell you I wanted you to shave?" I asked, genuinely confused. "No, but I thought you might," she replied. "I don't remember you ever mentioning it," I said. "Where did you get the idea that I wanted you to shave?" "Most certainly not from me." Kathy struggled to come up with an answer. I could feel my frustration growing. "I just thought it would be something different. A lot of girls are doing it now and I thought you might like it," she said. "Shouldn't we have discussed this first? At least to see how I feel about it?" I asked. "Maybe, but after all, it's not that big of a deal," she said. "It's my body, and if I want to shave off my kitty hair, that's my decision. If we don't like it, it will grow back." She had a point, but I wasn't ready to give in. There was something more going on here, something that didn't sit right with me. "Don't shave it now," I said. "We can talk about it later. And if it's that important to you, you can shave it tomorrow." The look on Kathy's face was more than just anger. There was also fear. I could understand her anger, but I couldn't understand the fear. "I'm ready to do it now, so why should I have to wait?" she demanded. "Because your husband is asking you to wait," I replied. "I don't like bald kitties. Why is it so important that you do it now?" "I'm all set to do it and I want to do it now," she said. "It's my hair, and if I want to shave it off, I will." "Okay, then go ahead and shave, but if you do, you'll have to go to the party alone," I said, turning to leave the bathroom. "Why are you being so unfair?" she asked, frustrated. "It's just something I want to do. Why do you have to make such a big deal out of it?" "I'm making a big deal out of this because I don't think you're telling me the truth about why you want to shave your kitty," I said. "You know I like your hair, so I know you weren't thinking of me when you decided to shave. If you can't tell me the truth, then we're not talking about this anymore. You can leave it alone and go to the party, or you can shave it and go alone. It's your choice." Kathy shot me a frustrated look, put the razor down, and climbed into the shower. I showered after Kathy, then lounged around in my bathrobe drinking a beer while Kathy put on her makeup. She didn't speak to me the whole time we were getting ready to go, and I knew she was angry with me. I didn't try to start any conversations, knowing it would only escalate things. I just watched her quietly as she got dressed, though I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As angry as Kathy was with me, I would have been very surprised if she was dressing that sexy for me, unless it was to make me jealous. I began to wonder if she was dressing for someone else. Kathy sat on the edge of the bed and began putting on a pair of black thigh-high stockings. As she rolled them up her legs, I wondered if she was aware that I was watching. She didn't seem to acknowledge my presence in the room. When she had both stockings on, she got off the bed and walked to her closet. Despite everything running through my mind, I couldn't help but get an erection as I watched Kathy walk away from me. She disappeared into the closet and came back a minute later with her black cocktail dress already halfway on. She walked into the bathroom, pulling the dress the rest of the way down, then sat in front of the mirror to fix her hair. When Kathy came out of the bathroom and stood in front of me, I felt my anger start to melt. But I knew I couldn't let that happen. I needed to keep my resolve strong because I still didn't know what lay ahead that night. At 7:30, I asked Kathy if she was ready to go. "I'm ready," she replied, giving me a smile. "You look really hot," I said. "You're going to melt someone's heart tonight." Kathy turned to head out the door and said, "Yours, I hope." I couldn't tell if she meant she was trying to melt my heart or break it. We drove the first 15 minutes in silence before Kathy finally spoke up. "I'm sorry about the shaving thing," she said. "I just thought it was a good idea at the time, and I'm so nervous about tonight that I guess I just kind of snapped when you gave me a hard time about it." "No problem," I replied, trying to ease the tension. "We can talk about that over the weekend. Let's just try to have some fun tonight." The party was being catered at the company's offices in a large classroom on the first floor. As soon as Kathy and I walked in and checked our coats, Hanson approached and greeted us. He then took Kathy aside for a moment. I could feel my blood pressure rising as I watched them, trying to pick up on any clues about their conversation. Kathy nodded a couple of times, but then shook her head. Hanson seemed to get upset, and Kathy became more animated. Their conversation seemed to end when Hanson started to walk away, but then he spun around and came back, smiling. It looked like he was suggesting something to her, and although she wasn't happy about it, she nodded yes. When Kathy came back over to me, I asked, "What did Hanson want?" "The National Pharmaceuticals deal is closing tonight," Kathy said, her tone flat. "I have to go to a meeting at 10 o'clock with Jack and Mr. Bartlett. If it goes well, we'll get the national contract and then I'll get my promotion." She didn't look as happy as she should have been if she was getting what she wanted. I tried to lighten the mood, saying, "Then we can start trying to make a baby." Kathy gave a short, emotionless reply, "Yes, we can start our family." I wanted to shake her and ask, "What the hell is going on?" Something didn't feel right, and I was starting to piece things together, but I wasn't sure how to confront it yet. As we walked into the large room where the party was held, Kathy slipped her arm through mine and leaned close. The room was nicely decorated, with several tables around the perimeter. A band was set up at one end, and there was a dancing area at the far end. They had set up a buffet and an open bar. I scanned the room, trying to spot anyone I recognized. I didn't know many of the DCNH people personally, but I had seen most of them over the last 6 years and could usually spot who belonged there and who didn't. It didn't take long to spot him. He was standing by the bar, alone. About 35 years old, 6 feet tall, and fit at around 175 pounds. He was dressed in a dark blue double-breasted Armani suit and, I'd admit, he was a handsome man. I pointed him out to Kathy and asked, "Who was that guy by the bar?" "I don't know," Kathy replied, but I could tell by her body language that she wasn't being truthful. "Why don't we go to the bar and get a drink?" I suggested. "There are some of my department members over here I'd like to say hello to. Why don't you get us both a drink, and I'll wait for you here?" She agreed, and I made my way to the bar. I ordered Kathy a glass of red wine and got myself a beer. As I turned to address the Armani-clad man, I said, "Mr. Benson, how are you tonight?" A look of surprise briefly crossed his face. "How do you know me?" he asked. "It's my job," I replied. "I'll take this wine over to Miss Alpin, and then I'd like to come back and talk to you if you don't mind. Mr. Benson studied me for a moment, and I could tell that I made him nervous, but not afraid. For a second, I thought he might know who I was, but I didn't see how that could be. It had to be something else about me that was bothering him. Okay, I'll be right here, he said. I took Kathy her drink and told her I was going to circulate while she talked to her friends. I don't want you off me, Kathy said. I need you to stay close tonight. I won't be gone long, I replied. I don't want to sit here and listen to you talk shop with your friends, she said. Kathy gave me a sad look as I got up from the table, but she let me go. When I was sure Kathy wasn't paying attention, I walked back toward Mr. Benson. I approached Mr. Benson again. My name is Fred. I work in security for DCNH, I said. I just want to make sure there are no problems tonight. I guess Mr. Hanson has a fun evening planned. That's what he tells me, Mr. Benson replied. I'm just killing time until the fun begins. I guess for you that starts around 10 o'clock, I said casually. You seem to know everything, Mr. Benson said, sounding a little nervous. Like I said, it's my job to know things tonight. I'm here to make sure no one bothers you, and that later no one interrupts you. If you know what I mean. I winked and gave him a sleazy smile. I take it you like brunettes? I continued. Love brunettes, especially with long hair, he said, matching my sleazy smile. Like Miss Alpin, you mean? I asked. Exactly, he said, his grin widening. I wanted to choke the scum right then, but I had to hold myself back. I'll bet you like me, I said. You like them with a lot of hair on their heads, but none between their legs, right? Bald is nice, he said, laughing. I had learned what I needed, and it was time to move away before I lost my control. I have to circulate now, make sure no one's here who shouldn't be. If you need anything, just come find me. I'll be around, I said, muttering profanities under my breath as I walked away. When I got back to the other side of the room, the band had started playing. A man approached Kathy and asked her to dance. She politely but firmly declined and then grabbed my arm, dragging me onto the dance floor before I had a chance to sit down. As we danced, I kept an eye on Mr. Benson, making sure he wasn't watching us. I didn't want him to figure out I was Kathy's husband just yet. I was still working out the last pieces of the puzzle. The stress was eating at me. By the time the song ended, it was already 9:30. My stomach was doing flips, and I was more nervous than I'd ever been. The song ended, but before I could return to the table, Kathy pulled me back onto the dance floor for a slow song. She held me close, and this time it felt different. She was holding me so tightly it was almost uncomfortable. At one point, I noticed Mr. Benson looking at me. He seemed a little uptight. I smiled at him and gave him a thumbs up, then tried to ignore him. I wondered if seeing me dance with Kathy made him suspicious that I wasn't who I claimed to be. But by then, I didn't care. When the dance ended, we headed back to the table. I was just sitting down when I saw Greg Bartlett approaching us, holding a small package. He pulled Kathy aside, whispered something to her, and handed her the package before walking off. Kathy returned to the table, holding the package behind her back. She bent down to speak to me. I have to go to the ladies' room, she said. When I looked up at her, I could see something in her eyes that made my stomach drop. Don't do it, I said, my voice low. Don't do what? She asked, pulling her arm away. I grabbed Kathy's arm and held it tightly. You know what I'm talking about. I know I'm not stupid, she replied, her voice defensive. I know what's going on here. Stop it now, I said, my voice firm. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. I just have to go to the bathroom. She pulled her arm away and walked off without looking back. As I watched her go, I reviewed what I knew, piecing things together. The problem started when Kathy first referred to Mr. Hansen as Jack. That had bothered me. Things escalated with her sudden depression, especially when she told me that the National Pharmaceuticals deal was in jeopardy and that it would be her fault if it failed, even though she hadn't done anything wrong. There were all the meetings with Bartlett and Hansen, and the meeting with the customer. Kathy seemed to be tracking her menstrual cycle or someone's. According to her calendar, tonight was a fertile night. I still couldn't make sense of it because Kathy was still on the pill. Then there was the argument about her shaving. She never told me the truth about why she wanted to do that, and I never told her what I saw earlier that evening. When I was standing on the porch, I had watched her through the window. My world came crashing down as I saw her, standing naked in the living room, thinking about how beautiful she looked. But then I saw a hand reach out from a chair next to her and touch her backside. I watched, horrified, as Kathy turned toward the chair. The hand moved around to her front and ran up and down her body. I finally saw who the hand belonged to, Jack Hansen. He leaned up from the chair and kissed Kathy. I only overheard part of what was said before I went to the garage and opened the door. I couldn't walk into the house with Kathy standing nude in front of another man. I just couldn't handle that. Opening the garage door was my way of letting them know I was home, giving them time to stop what they were doing. As I headed upstairs to confront Kathy, I peeked through the front door just in time to see Hansen scurrying across the street to his car. I figured Benson had seen Kathy and decided he wanted her, making it clear to Hansen that she was the deal breaker. I further guessed that Benson had demanded she shave for him. I didn't spend much time trying to understand why this was happening. I just knew I had to stop it before it went any further. With Bartlett and Hansen involved, I had to find a way to screw up their plans and make them pay. The last piece of the puzzle was Kathy's trip to the ladies' room. I was sure the package Bartlett had handed Kathy contained shaving cream and a razor. Kathy was now in there, shaving to give Benson the perk he had asked for. Well, screw her too. It was 9:45, and Kathy still hadn't returned to the table. My anxiety was building. I was running out of time. I hadn't figured out a clear plan of action, so I got up, planning to drag Kathy out of the building and deal with the fallout later. As I started toward the door, the band announced they were taking a break, and an idea popped into my head. I looked around quickly. Benson, Bartlett, and Hansen were standing together by the bar, perfect. I had the audience I needed. I walked over to the band as they were putting down their instruments and spoke to the lead singer. "Can you leave your mic hot?" I asked. "I want to make a few announcements." "Sure, no problem," he replied, handing me his wireless mic. "It's already hot. Just flip the switch on the side, and you're good to go." "Thanks," I said, pacing for a moment before taking a deep breath and turning the mic on. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" I called out. The noise in the room continued for a moment, but I repeated myself, louder. "Can I have your attention, please?" The room started to quiet down, and I noticed Kathy returning from the ladies' room. I glanced over at the trio, Benson, Bartlett, and Hansen, watching me with curious expressions. I took another breath and began. "Thank you. I just want to take a few minutes to talk to all of you on this special occasion. First, I want to say what a great party this is. Let's give a round of applause to the people who put this together for us." Most of the guests clapped, and Kathy slowly walked toward me. Her expression was one of fear. I'd had a few drinks, and I felt more confident than I had all evening, so I hoped my words would come out right. "The reason I wanted to talk to you is to share some things that are going on with me and my wonderful wife, Kathy." I smiled at Kathy, and then turned to face the three men standing by the bar. I couldn't tell what they were thinking, but they didn't look happy. "First, I want to share some good news with all of you. Kathy and I are going to have a baby." Many of the guests applauded. Kathy raised her hands to cover her face. Mild embarrassment to anyone who didn't know the truth. Hanson looked angry, Bartlett confused, but Benson's expression was unreadable. "There's more good news," I continued. "Kathy told me she's getting a promotion tonight because of her work on the National Pharmaceuticals deal. I understand that Kathy, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Hanson, and Mr. Benson are meeting upstairs tonight to sign the contract. Isn't that great?" More applause. "Oh God, please stop," I heard Kathy whisper. She had stopped about 10 feet from me and slowly sank to the floor. The two men, Bartlett and Hanson, were livid. Benson almost looked amused. "This evening started off so strangely that I thought I'd share it with all of you," I said. "When I got home from work tonight, I found my loving wife in the bathroom getting ready to shave. And I don't mean her legs or armpits." A few laughs from the crowd, but most people were now silent, sitting in stunned disbelief. We had a little argument about it. She told me it was supposed to be a surprise for me, and I told her not to do it. I thought I won that argument. At least I thought I did. But now I realize she wasn't shaving for me. She was doing it on orders from Jack. I paused, letting the tension build. Kathy was just in the ladies' room, and I believe she shaved herself while she was in there. Now, everyone was looking around nervously. Now, you're probably wondering why Jack Hanson would tell my wife to shave for him. Well, I'll tell you. It's because Jack is the one who wants to sleep with my wife, and she's been doing what he asks to keep her promotion. When I said Kathy had to shave her kitty, there was an audible gasp. Kathy was now lying on the floor, crying, and most of the guests were staring at me as if they were watching a train wreck. Only two of the a-holes were left. It seemed like Benson had already skipped out. Hanson's face was bright red, and he was shaking. Bartlett was walking toward me, looking like he thought he could stop me. The reason Kathy shaved her kitty is because she was supposed to be a gift to Mr. Benson tonight, and Mr. Benson wanted her kitty to be hairless, I said, my voice steady but cutting. It seems that your company management thinks it's good business to encourage its employees to have sex with potential customers to win contracts, even if it destroys a marriage. Bartlett was right in front of me now, trying to grab the microphone from my hand. I yanked it away and turned it off. "Listen, a-hole," I said. "You try to grab the mic from me again, and I'll drop you like a bag of rocks. Come to think of it, I might do that anyway." Bartlett stepped back, glancing at Hanson. As they exchanged a look, I turned the mic back on. "One last thing, and this is for Bartlett and Hanson. I will be filing a lawsuit against this company for what you've done to my marriage, and I'm sure I'll get a nice settlement. Part of that settlement will be that you two a-holes and anyone else involved in this mess will be fired. Good night, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your party." The room was dead silent as I set the mic down and walked over to where Kathy was lying on the floor. I squatted down beside her. "Kathy," I said softly. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Fred, I am so—" I interrupted her. "Don't say anything." I stood up, looking around. People were staring at us, but when I met their eyes, they quickly looked away. "Do you think you'll get that promotion now?" I asked coldly. I looked down at her one last time before walking out. I picked up my coat and was walking across the lobby toward the door when Hanson stepped in front of me. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he asked. "Yes," I replied, my voice calm but full of rage. "I screwed you before you and your cronies could finish screwing my wife. I hope I cost you millions. I would hate to think we all went through this for a few hundred." "You're going to pay for this," Hanson said, his voice shaking with anger. "Actually, I think you'll be the one paying," I shot back. "Along with my lawsuit, I'm going to have a discussion with the SEC. I think they might be interested in how this company has been doing business." I turned to leave, but Hanson grabbed my arm. "Just a minute. I'm not through with you yet," he said. I brushed his arm off. "You touch me again, and you won't be walking when you leave here tonight," I warned. I heard him muttering profanities behind me as I walked out. When I got home, I went straight to the liquor cabinet, grabbed a bottle of scotch, and began to slowly drink myself into oblivion. I believed this was the genesis of my nightmares. I was on my second drink when I noticed something blue sitting in one of the big potted plants on the kitchen floor. I got up to see what it was. It was a blue plastic case, well hidden under the foliage. I knew exactly what it was as soon as I picked it up. When I opened it, I confirmed my suspicion. I remembered something dropping out of the bathroom wastebasket on Monday morning. I had looked all over the kitchen for it, but never thought to look in the flower pot. I went back to the sofa and set the case down on the coffee table next to the scotch. I filled my glass and took a big gulp before picking up the case again. As I stared at it, I thought to myself, "It's full. None missing." I set the case down and poured another drink. I don't know how long I lasted, but when I woke up, it was 9 o'clock Saturday morning. The scotch bottle was nearly empty. My head was pounding, and my mouth tasted awful. I stood up, dizzy for a moment, my stomach in full rebellion against me. I started the coffee maker and went to take a shower. When I went upstairs, I noticed there was no sign Kathy had come home. I didn't really expect her to, either because she was afraid to face me or because she was pissed that I'd screwed everything up at DCNH. I wasn't sure if I cared either way. The shower helped a little. After 2 cups of coffee, scrambled eggs, and toast, I sat on the sofa in the family room trying to figure out my next move. It broke my heart to think about how much I had loved Kathy. How could she have done this to us? I couldn't believe that her ambition was so strong that she would agree to sleep with a customer to win a deal. And as if that wasn't bad enough, she was willing to shave her kitty for him too. I doubted I would ever be able to forgive Kathy for any of this, but I knew I had to give her a chance to explain herself if she wanted that chance. I just couldn't walk away without at least hearing what she had to say. But I would not pursue her to ask for an explanation. If she didn't feel the need to try and explain her actions, then I really didn't need to know why. The why would only matter if she wanted a second chance with me. I couldn't think of anything else to do but wait and see if Kathy tried to contact me. I began to wonder where she had spent the night and then remembered the way she looked when I left the party. I felt a little guilty about leaving her on the floor like that. I realized I should have brought her home with me, but at the time I was hurt, angry, and felt no sympathy for her. The more I thought about it, the worse I felt, and the more I wondered where she was staying. I was still sitting on the sofa at 11 o'clock when the phone rang. I assumed it was Kathy calling and debated whether I should answer. I picked up the phone on the 6th ring. "Mr. Alpin?" "Yes. This is Special Agent Mark Walker from the FBI," the voice on the phone said. "Is your wife with you?" "My wife is not home," I replied, wondering why the FBI would want to talk to Kathy. "No problem. It's you I want to talk to," Agent Walker said. "Me?" I asked, confused. "What's this about?" "I'd rather not discuss this over the phone," he said. "Can you come to my office this afternoon?" "I guess so," I said, trying to process this. "Where are you located?" Agent Walker gave me directions to his office, and I agreed to meet him at 2 o'clock that afternoon. After the call, I tried to figure out why the FBI would want to meet with me. The best I could figure was that it must have something to do with one of the cases I had worked on recently. But if that were the case, why couldn't he tell me over the phone? I had dealt with law enforcement before, but something about this invitation from the FBI made me uneasy. At 1 o'clock, I dressed in jeans and a sweater and headed into town to meet with Agent Walker. I left my car in a parking garage across the street from the high-rise office building in downtown Indianapolis. where the FBI offices were located. I took the elevator up to the 7th floor and gave my name to the receptionist. "I'm here to see Special Agent Walker," I said. "Have a seat, and I'll let him know you're here," she replied. I only had to wait 2 minutes before he came into the lobby to get me. Unlike the expensive Armani suit he had worn the night before, Agent Walker was now dressed in blue Dockers and a white Oxford shirt, no tie. "Mr. Alpin, thanks for coming in," he said, offering a handshake. "Please follow me." I followed him into a conference room. After I sat down, Agent Walker offered me a cup of coffee, which I accepted. He poured 2 cups from the coffee maker on the table in the corner and handed one to me. He took a sip of his coffee and then sat down across from me. "Should I call you Special Agent Walker or Mr. Benson?" I asked. "Why don't you try Mark?" he said. "And may I address you as Fred?" "Fred will be fine." "I guess you must be pretty confused right now," Mark said. "Yes, I am, but I think I'm starting to get a picture of what's going on," I replied. "I take it you were working undercover as Mr. Benson?" "That's right," he said. "I'm counting on your discretion to keep anything I tell you here confidential. I think you probably know that I'm an investigator myself and understand confidentiality," I said. "I'm still not sure if you're a friend or foe. I hope you can explain all this to me and how my wife got involved in this mess. I'll tell you what I can and answer any questions, as long as they don't jeopardize our investigation," Mark said. "Okay, I'll listen to what you have to say, but I have to tell you I'm really pissed that my wife was used the way she was. This mess has probably ended my marriage," I said. "Things may not be as bad as you think," Mark said. "Let me just put you in the picture, and then you can ask your questions." "That's fine with me," I said. "Earlier this year, the Securities and Exchange Commission contacted the FBI," he started. "They had received some disturbing information about the business tactics of DCNH from someone inside the company and asked us to investigate the allegations. After following up on the information given to us by the SEC, we found enough evidence to justify further investigation. I can't tell you about all of our investigations, other than to say it was decided that some undercover work was necessary." Mark got up and began to pace around the room as he spoke. "Our investigation revealed that DCNH had been trying to get National Pharmaceuticals interested in a merger," Mark continued. "Mr. Benson had spoken with one of our agents and indicated that he was concerned with DC's tactics. At that point, we discovered that no one at DCNH had actually met Mr. Benson. With his cooperation, I took on his identity and began negotiating with DCNH. I convinced Mr. Hansen and Mr. Bartlett that I was Mr. Benson and led them to believe I was interested in their ideas for a merger. When they started drooling over the millions they thought they would make off the deal, I began acting reluctant. I told them I wanted to talk to other firms before making a decision. The goal was to see what tactics they would use to try and get me to sign the deal." "So you asked for my wife?" I asked, my voice tight. "Not exactly," Mark replied. "On my first visits to DCNH's offices, I was introduced to your wife as I was escorted to the conference room to meet with Bartlett and Hansen. I told Hansen that I'd really like to talk to Mrs. Alpin. His response was, 'She's quite attractive, isn't she?' I agreed with him, but that wasn't why I asked to see her." "Why did you want to see her?" I asked, my voice now a little sharper. I told Hansen that, because she was head of the accounting department, I wanted to talk to her about the financial condition of the company I was supposedly planning to merge with. The real reason was that your wife was the insider who contacted the SEC with concerns about how DCNH was doing business. "So Kathy knew you were working undercover for the FBI?" I asked, still trying to process everything. "No," Mark answered. "I couldn't tell her. The information she sent to the SEC indicated that the company's problems involved people higher up in the company than Bartlett and Hansen. She had implicated the company president and the CEO. I didn't know if I could trust her. Given that my assignment was to investigate Bartlett and Hansen, I couldn't be sure she wouldn't blow my cover to protect them. So Kathy had blown the whistle on the company executives. I wasn't sure what that meant for me. If she didn't know that Benson was a fake, was she planning to have sex with him at the party? I had more questions I wanted to ask Mark, but decided to wait until he finished talking to see if I would get any answers from what he was saying. As I was saying, Mark continued, I had indicated to Hansen that I might back out of the deal, so he asked me what it would take to get me to sign with DC&H. I asked him what he had to offer, and that's when Hansen said, I noticed you think Kathy Alpin is pretty hot. How would you like to get a piece of that? Mark paused, looking at me. I was surprised by that. I expected him to offer me a bribe, but not this. I had to see where this would lead, so I told him I might be interested, but I didn't commit. This next part may be difficult for you to hear, Mark said, but it's important to the story. Nothing you can say will be worse than what I've already been through, I replied, my voice firm. Okay, Mark said. I waited a few days, then met with Hansen again. He asked me if I had thought over his offer. I asked him if he meant by his offer that he would arrange it so I could have sex with your wife. He answered in the affirmative. I didn't want to act too anxious, so I said I was definitely interested but still wasn't sure if she would be worth it. Hansen assured me she would be worth it, and then said, she has a bald kitty. Wouldn't you like to screw a bald kitty? You never suggested that you wanted Kathy to shave? I asked, incredulity in my voice. No, Mark said. Since I hadn't planned on having sex with her, that thought never entered my mind. I wasn't even sure how Hansen could promise to deliver on his offer, so I asked him how he would get a married woman to agree to give herself to me as payment for signing a contract. He said, let me worry about that. If you want her, she's yours, bald kitty and all. That son of a... I muttered. Who the hell does he think he is? He's a sleazy scumbag. Mark continued. The more he talked about me having sex with your wife, the more excited he seemed to become. I got the feeling he wanted me to accept his offer for more reasons than just getting me to sign the contract. I let him go on for a while, then asked him when he could arrange for me to get together with your wife. He immediately said we'd do it during the company Christmas party on the 20th. So you were going to go through with it? I asked, my voice hardening. You were going to have sex with my wife just to keep your undercover investigation going? No, Mark said, shaking his head. I had no intention of having sex with your wife. First of all, it would have been unethical for me to do that, and second, I was almost positive the room where I was supposed to meet your wife had hidden cameras and microphones to record the action. This was going to be more than just a sexual favor. To get me to sign the contract, it was also designed to give them material that could be used to blackmail me. Mark continued. How are you going to get out of it? I asked, still reeling from everything he had shared. I plan to balk at the last moment and say that the circumstances aren't right, he said. Then I'll say I'm willing to close the deal, but Miss Alpin will have to join me in my hotel room after the party. Once I have her alone, I'm going to identify myself and bring her down here to be interrogated. We were planning on arresting Bartlett and Hansen today. We thought by this morning we would have enough evidence to indict them both. Then last night you walked up to me, introduced yourself, and said you were with security. The fact is, I knew who you were, and I was afraid you knew what was going on and were part of it. I wasn't sure which side you were on until you made your speech. Oh, I said, my voice tight. I hope I didn't screw up your investigation. But I couldn't stand by and let my wife give herself to another man as part of a business deal. I understand, Mark said. You didn't really do any damage. In fact, you saved me from having to deal with the meeting I was supposed to have with them at 10 o'clock last night. I was able to leave with my cover intact, and I could talk to Hanson again this morning. He made me a large cash offer to sign today. I told him I'd meet him in his office on Monday morning, and when he hands me the money, we'll arrest him and shut down DCNH while we do an in-depth investigation of every deal they've been involved with for the last 3 years. I still don't know where Kathy stands in all this, I said, my voice shaking with frustration. Your wife was trying to do the right thing by blowing the whistle on the company, Mark said. As for her part in the offer made to me, I suspect she was being coerced by Hanson. He may be blackmailing her somehow. Was there any mention of your using a condom? I asked, the question escaping before I could stop it. Yes, Mark answered, his tone measured. Once I agreed to the deal, Hanson made it very clear that Kathy insisted I wear a condom. We wouldn't want to get the poor girl pregnant, now would we? Hanson said. I felt a knot tighten in my chest. So she was part of this? She knew. She wasn't completely innocent in this mess, Mark said. But there were extenuating circumstances. I need to hear Kathy's side of the story, I said. She wasn't completely blameless, but I need to know if she was coerced, if she had any choice in the matter. That's really all I can tell you right now, Mark said. Do you have any more questions? Not right now, I replied, my mind still reeling. But I have to remind you not to discuss any of this investigation with anyone. I'd ask that you not tell your wife anything yet. Wait until we have Bartlett and Hanson under indictment before you tell her this was all an FBI sting operation. That should only be a couple of days from now. We'll want to talk to her then, anyway. I understand, I said, nodding. Mark told me he would call when it was time to talk to Kathy. He also mentioned they would probably want to speak to me to get my side of the story. We shook hands and I left the building. When I got home, there was a message from Kathy asking me to call her. I called the number she left, and a woman answered. Who should I say is calling? The voice asked. Tell her it's her husband, I said. Kathy's voice sounded nervous when she came on the line. Where have you been? She asked. I've been calling all day. Not all day, I replied. I was home until 1 o'clock this afternoon. Oh, I guess that's when I started calling you, she said. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. She was going to have to show me she was ready to explain herself. I stayed silent, waiting for her to say something. Fred, can I come home? She asked. This is where you live, isn't it? I asked. You should be here now. I'll be home in an hour, she said, her voice small. Okay, I said, and hung up. It was already 5 o'clock, and I decided to have dinner ready when she arrived. After dinner, we could talk. I got started on dinner, spaghetti and meatballs, a salad, and a bottle of wine. As I worked, I also picked up the blue case from the coffee table in the family room and slipped it into my pocket. Kathy walked in the door at 6:05, and the dinner was ready. When she saw the table set and the wine open, I could see some of the stress leave her face. She could tell things weren't as bad as she first thought. First, we didn't speak. We sat down at the table and I poured the wine. We began eating, the silence between us heavy and painful. I asked Kathy where she had spent the night. One of my friends had taken me home after you left, and I couldn't resist teasing her a little. Oh, you didn't stay for the rest of the party? I said. I pretty much ended it with my speech. She replied, I guess I owe some people apologies for that. Not you, though, and certainly not Bartlett or Hanson. I guess you're right, I said. I owe you the apology. She was about to say more, but I stopped her. We'll talk after dinner. We fell into silence. There wasn't much else to discuss at that moment. After dinner, Kathy started putting the dishes in the dishwasher, but I stopped her. You can clean the kitchen later. We need to talk now, I said. We went into the family room and sat facing each other. Do you want to just tell me everything? Or should I start asking questions? Either way, I expect only the truth, I said. I'll tell you everything, she said. I'm sure you know when it started. It was the day after your Christmas party. Jack called me and said that a big deal they were working on with National Pharmaceutical was in trouble. He told me Mr. Benson had said he would only sign the contract if I agreed to sleep with him. Couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe he would ask me to do something like that, Kathy continued. I was furious. But he told me this deal was very important to the company, and if I went along with it, I'd be rewarded handsomely, talking about a lot of money and a promotion. I didn't want to do it, but Jack kept pressuring me, saying a lot of people were depending on me. I told him I needed to think about it. They had me so confused and stressed that I couldn't think straight. When you came home and I looked at you, I knew I couldn't do this to you. Jack and Mr. Bartlett kept pushing me all day Monday, trying to get me to agree. Mr. Hansen said if the deal fell through, it would be my fault, and they'd have to let me go. They also warned that if I told anyone, I'd be fired. I tried to tell you as much as I could. I knew that if you knew the whole story, you would do something crazy, and I'd lose my job. On Tuesday, I told them I wouldn't do it. They told me to think it over again. Then Mr. Hansen told me the company was missing more than $100,000. And if there was an audit, it would look like I had been embezzling money for years. Jack said I'd go to jail. He told me that if I did what they asked, I'd get the money and the promotion. But if I didn't cooperate, there would be an audit and I'd be charged with embezzlement. In the end, I had to agree to do what they wanted. Jack and Mr. Bartlett made sure I didn't back out. They kept telling me I was doing the right thing and that you'd understand how important the deal was. By this point, I was getting angry. You can't seriously believe that I'd think what you were doing was okay, I said. You should have told me everything. I would have found a way out for you. I know, Kathy said. Once I decided to go through with it, I felt a little better. But I felt so guilty about what I was doing to you. You have to understand, I was terrified of going to jail. I had to risk it. On Friday, Jack called me into his office. He told me Mr. Benson wanted me to shave all my pubic hair off. I told him I couldn't do that. He said Mr. Benson would walk away from the deal if I didn't do it. He told me to shave it off before the party and not let you see it until later. Then I was supposed to say it was a surprise. If you got mad, I was just supposed to apologize and say I'd let it grow back. But you came home earlier than expected and caught me getting ready to shave. Was I right? I asked. Did you shave yourself in the ladies' room at the party? Kathy looked down at her hands. Yes, Mr. Bartlett sent someone to the store to get a razor and shaving cream. I went into the ladies' room and shaved myself. When I came back, I saw you with the microphone trying to get everyone's attention. I was so scared. I had no idea what you were planning, and I didn't know if there was any way I could stop you. I couldn't believe you said I was pregnant. I didn't say you were pregnant, I said. I said we were going to have a baby. You weren't pregnant yet, but that was our plan, wasn't it? Well, yes, but what? Are we or aren't we going to start a family? I asked. Yes, we are, Kathy replied. I'll get off my birth control pills tomorrow, and then we can start. One more question, I said. Did you tell Benson that he would have to use a condom? Jack told me he was going to make him use one, she answered. I'm glad he did, because it hadn't occurred to me. I was so stressed by the whole situation that I wasn't thinking straight. Anyway, you made your little speech and basically ended my career at DCNH. You probably killed the deal with National Pharmaceutical, too. So essentially, what you're telling me is that Bartlett and Hansen coerced and blackmailed you into agreeing to sleep with Benson to close a business deal. They also insisted you had to fulfill Benson's demand to shave your pubic hair. I said. But I screwed things up by catching you trying to shave, even after I told you not to. In the end, the only reason you didn't sleep with Benson was because of my speech. Does that sum it up? Yes, Kathy said, but quickly added. But I don't blame you for what you did. I understand why you did it. Oh, good. Then you forgive me for trying to keep my wife from sleeping with another man? I said sarcastically. That's not what I meant, she replied. I know you had every right to react the way you did, and I have no right to be upset with you. I'm upset with myself. I should have told you everything from the start. Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? Kathy asked. That depends, I said. Is that everything? Have you told me everything I need to know about what's been going on? Yes, I've told you everything, Kathy said, her voice trembling. I love you, and I can't bear to think that I could lose you because of this mess I got myself into. Well, things don't look as bad as they did at first, I said, watching the smile slowly return to her face. But I just have a couple of questions left. After that, maybe we can put this behind us. Okay, what questions? I could hear the joy creeping back into her voice. I pulled the blue case out of my pocket and tossed it on the coffee table. I found this in the trash the other day. It's full of your birth control pills. You threw them away last week, but you didn't tell me about it. You tried to make me believe you were still taking them. Just 5 minutes ago, you said you would stop taking them tomorrow. Can you explain that to me? Kathy looked like I had punched her. Her mouth opened a couple of times, but no words came out. When she finally spoke, I knew she was lying. You're right, she said. I stopped taking my pills. I was planning to let you get me pregnant, then surprise you. I know how much you wanted to start a family, so I thought it would be a nice surprise. But that plan would only have worked if we'd been having sex. The last time we made love was the day before I stopped taking my pills. I wasn't in the mood for sex during that time. I was too upset about what Mr. Bartlett and Jack wanted me to do. Were you aware that last night was the most fertile night of your cycle? I asked. That was another question that stunned her. No, I wasn't aware of that. I had too many other things on my mind to be thinking about that, she claimed. It just strikes me as odd that you were planning on having sex with Benson last night, in the middle of your menstrual cycle, and it never occurred to you to insist that a condom be used, I said. But it did occur to Jack. What are you trying to say? She asked. That I knew I was fertile and was willing to take the chance of getting pregnant? I said. I would never do that. Kathy was rattled. I could tell. I was getting tired of playing games with her, so I decided to end it. One more question, Kathy, I said. How long have you been sleeping with that rat scum Hanson? Kathy was speechless. No more lies. I know you've been tracking your menstrual cycle and had marked last night on your day planner, I said. I also know that Hanson demanded that Benson use a condom. Since I wasn't sleeping with you, the only one left is Hanson. He wanted to get you pregnant, didn't he? I looked at Kathy, who started crying. She made no attempt to answer. It was Hanson who wanted you shaved, not Benson, I continued. And you did that for him, even though I told you not to. That he has more influence over you than I do, I said. Lest you think I'm just making wild guesses. Last night when I came home from work, I looked through the front door. I saw you standing naked in the living room. I saw Hanson touching your back and then kissing your stomach, the way a man kisses the stomach of a woman carrying his child. Or in this case, will be carrying it. Did you think I'd be so stupid that you could have his baby and make me think it was mine? Or were you planning to leave me all along? You spent last night with him, didn't you? Kathy wept loudly as I stood up and left the room. When I came back into the kitchen, carrying my suitcase, Kathy looked up at me. She jumped out of her chair and ran to me. Please don't leave me. I love you. I don't love Jack, she pleaded. I told you, I said. He blackmailed me. I had no choice but to do what he asked. Why didn't you just keep taking your birth control pills and lie to Jack? You certainly didn't have any problem lying to me, I said bitterly. I think I would have to believe what that rat scum told me over anything you've said lately. Oh, and by the way, when I was watching with that jerk last night, I heard you say, I love you to him. So where does that leave me? I don't love him, she said, her voice cracking. If I'm pregnant, I'll have an abortion. I love you. Please, you have to believe me. No, I replied. As for the baby, don't abort it on my account. Kathy collapsed on the floor, sobbing. When I looked back from the garage door, she looked just like she did the night before, when I left her at the party. I no longer felt any love for her, only disgust. I hated leaving the house we had worked so hard to build, but it held no fond memories for me. Fortunately, we hadn't lived there long enough to build those memories. It's been more than 2 years since I walked out on Kathy. When I left, I found a furnished apartment and tried to start over. That's when the nightmare began. I wasn't happy with what I was doing, so I quit my job and headed to California. Once I found a place to live, I started my own insurance investigation company. I called Bill Ripley and asked if he wanted to be my partner. 2 months later, he joined me. When he came out, he told me that when Mary Faux heard we were starting our own company, she asked if we had a job for her. Mary moved out here 14 months ago, and we started dating 2 months later. After 3 months, we moved in together. I was surprised that I fell in love again so quickly. I wasn't in a rush to get married again, but I liked having someone I cared about to share my life with. I've kept track of my favorite people in Indianapolis through a few contacts, including Special Agent Mark Walker. It turned out that Kathy had blown the whistle on the company president and the CEO at Jack Hansen's direction. Hansen had them in trouble for shady deals they were involved in, hoping the board of directors would fire them. He assumed that he would then become the company president of DCNH. Apparently, Kathy wasn't lying when she told me she didn't love Hansen. She was playing him because he was in love with her. She knew that if he got what he wanted, she would get anything she wanted. Hansen and his wife didn't have children, which he blamed on her. After I left, he tried for more than a month to get Kathy pregnant but wasn't successful with her either. Turned out that he was sterile. His wife found out about his affair with Kathy and divorced him a month later. He was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for his actions at DCNH. Bartlett also got jail time, 2 years in a minimum security federal prison. Kathy was fired by DCNH, and the company was reorganized before being bought out by a larger consulting firm. The last I heard, Kathy was teaching bookkeeping at a community college just outside Columbus, Ohio. I try not to think about Kathy. The wounds are still too fresh for me to think about the good times we had. I don't miss her, which is a good thing. Mary more than fills the whole Kathy left in my life, and that's why I married her. Now here I sit, staring at Mary and wondering if I should wake her up. Not to tell her I had the dream again, but to tell her I love her. Last night, Mary told me that whenever I decide I want a baby, all I have to do is ask. But make sure to place the order early because there's a 9-month wait. She added, I'm thinking of placing my order tomorrow. By the way, in case you were wondering about DCNH, you were right if you were thinking Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. If you enjoyed this, subscribe to JK Tells a Story for more tales.